So here we are again. Brazil. Uh out again. Times like this, like I just have to look at the landscape of football right now. Where we live in a world where basically the old superpowers of Germany, teams like Germany, Italy, and Brazil are losing relevancy. Prior to I should say prior to 2014, actually no, 2018, because that's when France won their last World Cup. Brazil, Germany, and Italy did still have traction. Um, Especially Germany, because they were the world champions back then. And yeah, it's like the landscape is slowly shifting. There seems to be this changing of the guard taking place, where countries like Argentina, France, and even Norway, who have actually been dark horses in this entire World Cup, are slowly rising up. The gap in football is slowly reducing, where there's no longer this void in between the big teams and the small teams anymore. Which is why you have teams now like Cape Verde, or Cape Verde, teams that have never been to this stage before in football, rising up and challenging the heavyweights in football. Uh, and doing it in amazing fashion too, in ways no one actually expects. The decline in Brazil, especially, is one which goes beyond what most people would expect. And when this loss happened, when Brazil lost to Norway, initially I put the blame on Ancelotti, and for a while, like right after the match, I had to take some time off to really look at it properly, and I realized that it's not just Ancelotti. This goes way deeper. This is completely this has to do entirely with just Brazilian football as a whole. This isn't like last time or the previous World Cups where you could just put the blame on one person or one group of people, like the players or the manager or the FA. This is an entire system problem. Now, yes, I'm going to actually speak on Ancelotti first, then I'll speak on the players, and then I'll go into the root cause of the issue, where I think the problem might actually be. Um, and I feel like most people who have done football reactions to this outcome, this match result, have actually spoken on like one side of what I'm actually speaking on. So some might actually focus on Ancelotti being the problem, others might actually focus on the players being the problem, and then there are others who actually focus on the entire Brazilian FA or Football Federation structure being a problem, which is true because in three areas they both have a contributing role to the decline of Brazilian football in general. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that I'm looking at it from a general perspective, where each of these three areas have led to its decline over time. Uh, and yeah, for Ancelotti to start off with, I before that game before this game, the one between Brazil and Japan, I could see the cracks beginning to show within this Brazilian squad. Just in that game, what I noticed was that Brazil kept on waiting till the second half to do something. Where they have this problem where they sort of hold back in the first half. They actually save up their energy into the second half to try and win the game by that side of by that um time of the match, which often leads to a situation where teams like Japan and Norway as well tend to equalize and try to win the game during the dying minutes of the match. And with Brazil, it is quite risky because if you do that often, you increase your chances of actually losing the match, and that's what happened again in Norway. So they didn't actually learn from the previous match in the round of 32 with Japan. Because Japan actually were gaining momentum throughout that match. And they could have actually easily won had it not been for the fact that Brazil kicked, like, basically went into full gear and got back control into the game and actually won it. But that strategy didn't work for Norway. Because when you have a Norwegian side which has a good finisher, a world class finisher in Haaland, and a team structure which actually works in unison to get the best out of Haaland, you are going to actually have the situation where you would lose. So with Ancelotti, his strategy didn't actually plan out the way he expected, which leads me on to the other issue with regards to the fact that Brazil have a problem with their defense. Basically, their defense is actually non-existent at this point. Because how is it that we've gone from the likes of Marcelo, David Luiz, and a Thiago Silva to what they have now? It's just mind-boggling. Because there is a drop in talent even in certain areas of this team. Defense-wise, they are by far the weakest they've been in history. Um, and the midfield is just disgusting right now because you have a Casemiro who's actually practically almost exiting stage at this point from the Brazilian team because they just caught up with him. And another thing about Brazil, with regards to Ancelotti, is that having just Bruno Guimaraes and Neymar and Vinicius as your penalty takers has an issue to do with the fact that, well, there is this issue to do with the fact that there's not a lot of good penalty takers in this squad. I'm sorry, but Bruno Guimaraes cannot be your number one penalty taker. It is impossible. Which is why I feel like as they got into the knockout stages of this competition, he ought to have actually played Neymar more in the starting 11. I can understand why. Actually, I do understand why he actually rested him during the group stages because obviously Neymar is injury prone. And if it was me, I would have actually had him in right after group stages into the knockout stages in the starting 11 with the likes of Vinicius and Rafinha, who unfortunately was injured for this match too. And if that actually happened, I'm pretty sure Neymar would have actually converted the first penalty, which was done by, which was actually missed by Bruno Guimaraes in the first half. So yeah, strategy wise, Ancelotti really messed up. Um, and that's the thing too, because you could clearly see he was trying to play an Italian form of football with Brazil, which does not work. Because Brazil are built to be a flair attacking type of team. It's in your DNA. So when you're trying to bring in that European Italian style of football into this Brazilian squad, it is sort of an oil and water type of effect where two cannot mix, which definitely resulted in this happening with Norway taking advantage of their weaknesses and obviously winning the match. In terms of the players, um, yeah, with Vinicius Junior throughout the match, I noticed that his effect on this team was to the extent that you could clearly see he was not really getting the best out of the others. So in as an individual, he was doing the best he can to score. Obviously, so he is a winger and an attacker. But then the others, like Ramirez and Casemiro, they weren't really in a position to help the attack. Because as much as I like to think that Casemiro still has something to give to this team, especially him. There is a drop in quality within that midfield, which needs to be seriously addressed. Which leads on to my concern with regard to the fact that Joao Pedro could have actually done something if he had been included in the squad for Brazil's attack, especially when Rafinha was absent in this game. Um, yeah, and it goes back to what I said before, where now I do understand why Hendrick was not used much for Brazil, because that chance which he missed was just. I mean, I have no words to say because it was shocking. It really was shocking. Um, and that's the thing too, because it seemed when you compare Norway's chances to Brazil's chances, Brazil had a lot of chances in the first half to really win this game, but they failed to capitalize on it. Whereas with Norway, with the chances they had, they kept on building confidence to the extent where over time they made the most of it, which obviously led to Haaland scoring um, those two goals too as well. Now, I said before that this problem with the structure of the team and with just Brazilian football in general goes deeper than just the manager or the head coach in this case, so Ancelotti and the players. But it's just the footballing structure right now of Brazil in total, where you have this problem of the younger talent leaving too early from the Brazilian clubs to Europe to play in certain clubs, where the flair attacking form of football is sort of stifled out of them, and they become more or less system merchants, where they have to depend on the systems that are given to them to play. Which is why it's very hard to see certain players like Ronaldinho or Neymar, a younger Neymar, come up again. Personally, I feel like more needs to be done to try and convince the younger Brazilian players to really develop, um, really take time to develop in Brazilian clubs before moving on, before taking on the next stage to move to certain European clubs too as well. So, if memory serves me right, Neymar didn't actually make the move to Barcelona until he turned 21 or 23, so just before the 2014 World Cup. Um, and I feel like that mindset needs to come back where the younger Brazilian talents have to be motivated to maybe stay for a season or two until they reach their early to mid 20s before they make the move to Europe in order to develop the flair and and that attacking style of play prior to making the big move. Another thing I have to address is that Brazil need to now focus more on building up their midfield talents and their defense talents too as well, the defensive players, because there seems to be this drought taking place where too much focus is being made on the attacking players, less focus is being made on the defensive and the midfield players going forwards. So yeah, it is a systematic problem in general, which involves the players, the coach, and just the entire football structure in Brazil.